Welcome back, everyone. We are ready to kick off our finals for the day and our finals for Swiss stage of this tournament overall and for Grandmasters Season 2 here over in the European region. We've got Seiko versus Viper coming up. And honestly, Saul, even though I've picked Seiko to win the whole week, it is a fairly unexpected finals. I think we were both honestly expecting to see Malygos Druid versus, say, Zoo or a Mali Mirror potentially, but seeing Priest in this final is a bit of a surprise.
Yeah, I think the zoo that we have on one side is certainly the expected half of the outcome, but I would have expected the Mali Druid to comfortably defeat the Priest on the other side as well. So Seiko has completed step one of his two-stage miracle here, which is going to be what it takes to win this week of Swiss and get himself a weekly championship name under his belt, because he has two of the roughest matchups that he could possibly be facing for his specialist build, which, not only just in terms of overall archetype of Priest going up against Mali Druid and Zoo, but also just in terms of his tech decisions as well. He doesn't really have anything under the hood to counter these matchups specifically. He did switch to secondary to be able to make the comeback against Casey, but I don't think it's a particularly Mali Druid tweaked build that he had. It was just kind of incidentally more powerful in that matchup, and I think the same thing can now be said for the matchup against Zoo. He doesn't really have anything to pull out as a curveball here.
Yeah, whereas on Viper's side, Viper doesn't need anything different really in his list, right? He brought minimal techs anyway. In his secondary, only 3 cards different. 2 of those were acidic Swampus, clearly for the weapon matchups. And then his third tertiary deck was actually just 2 cards, which is some Fury Protector times 2 to help with some taunt, and just removing a Brittle Bone, a Destroyer, and a Disease Vulture. So really, Viper just saying, actually, this main list is just the good list. Of course, if you know you're against a weapon class, you would like an Ooze. But outside of that, really, Saul, these changes seem so minor that it's just showing the power of this core list in all of the matchups he was expecting to face.
Yeah, I believe Viper tweeted to say that he'd only had to switch decks once during the entire tournament, so he might have just been able to save himself some time and just not bother, just submit his primary 3 times and just be getting on with it. But yeah, I'd imagine he's on primary all the way through here. He was in his opening matchup. Don't see any reason why that is going to change up against Priest. And the player who is favored in the matchup, in my opinion, is not changing here either. Viper is in a very, very comfortable position, but Seiko has made one miracle happen, and we will have to wait and see whether he can complete part 2.
Yep, Seiko with a very quick decision on the mulligan there, just keeping hold of Imprisoned Vile Fiend, which seems like a very obvious choice, but just getting rid of everything else, whereas Viper already has to go in the tank, honestly, and I think these Zoo mulligans are also very interesting. Not only are how you execute the turns in the early to mid game with Zoo difficult, but the mulligans, there's so many upsides and downsides to every single choice you have that even this one has confused me. Just a Nightshade Matron being kept against Priest.
Yeah, surprising. I was actually kind of looking at full mull there, just to really secure some of those power cards. Flame Imp on 1, Raise Dead, Dark Lair, of course, generally the things that you are looking for here. He has found himself a reasonable power opener. He can put out a lot of damage very, very quickly with the Camera Fed here as kind of an alternate ramp method outside of the Dark Lair. But yeah, holding on to the Nightshade was certainly not something I was expecting either.
And there is even the chance now he could just go Coin Camera-Fed Flame Imp and go really big, really quick.
Yep.
Does open up a worst life tap turn 2 whilst piling on the pressure. So often when you tap on turn 2, it's because you're having a slower gain. Well, Viper gets to do both here, which honestly, even though losing the coin hurts a little bit, as I think it can be used to a great effect with the Zoo deck, I think this is actually worth it for me. So.
He picks up the 0-cost Voidwalker.
Oh, was that yeah.
Oh, so much power so quickly. Being tossed out onto the board now.
Viper just considering the implications of a Breath of the Infinite on curve. But honestly, the 2 minions he's considering playing survive Breath of the Infinite on curve. So I think that thought trail is a relatively short one.
Agreed. He does lose access to basically any play next turn based on his current hand, if the Camera Fed does bite the dust, though, which is a little bit disappointing for him. And yeah, you see Viper, the grin, or perhaps more accurately, the grimace, coming out. He knows he's going to be up against it now. he is going to lose board for at least one turn here.
Well, with the Hand of Gul'dan and the Nightshade Matron, he knows he has a good recovery mechanic, which will also help not only to recover the board, but really give him some options going forward in the next few turns with all that card draw with the Hand of Gul'dan. Oh, well, that's a good pickup.
It certainly is. I mean, it's going to make this suggestion look slightly silly, but I was going to raise the idea of just Cabal Acolyte, just tempoing it out there, to potentially protect a little bit from the Nightshade Matron play. However, that would have left an additional 1-1 up, so the Nightshade Matron and the 1-1 would have been able to get through the Cabal Acolyte anyway. So maybe that is not as good as it initially seemed, and certainly now with the One Maker hitting the Wave of Apathy, that Cabal Acolyte is an insane draw here.
Right. And look at this steal. I mean, okay, I said look at this steal like Seiko always does this. But a large part of me feels Seiko always does this. If he just wave steals, this Nightshade Matron seems incredibly powerful. And it just drops a 2/6 taunt in the way. Seems good to me.
It does. Viper does have it checked, though, weirdly. Potentially with the Brittlebone Destroyer and Penflinger combination. Can't quite fit it all in one go. But should be able to at least stay pretty competitive on the board state.
You don't pick the one.
Or Seiko can just go for a rebuy here and just reset up his opening turn again, reliving the glory days for Seiko right now, which I don't mind either.
Sure.
We'll say, though, if Viper draws a Dark Glare, he has 1,000 mana with this hand, right? It's just unlimited mana at that point.
He does. Yeah, and what this does now is fight for board very efficiently, but also holds back that Cabal Acolyte Wave of Apathy target for maybe a must-kill or must-steal target that he doesn't really have answers to at the moment. Flame Tongue Totem? Okay.
He's going to get him a few extra minions, though.
What is this positioning?
Bad. The problem here now, Sol, because Viper doesn't have any of the big explosive turns, does this just mean Seiko can and will just get hold of this board and hold of this game? Because, as you do like to point out, if Seiko sticks a board once or twice, Viper's kind of nearly dead already.
Yeah.
It's on 16.
Yeah, big problem. He does have currently 2 Soul Fragments in his deck from the Spirit Jailer, which can rebound him a little bit, but yeah, the deck generally does not heal a great deal over the course of the game.
I must consider.
It's just so close to just being kind of nutty. Like, weirdly, if Seiko could just take care of the 2 middle minions and slide the Flame Tongue back over towards the Diseased Vulture, he could then make this same play, Shadow Word Death the Vulture, and steal away the Flame Tongue Totem as the last minion remaining for the full board clear.
Oh.
It's very close to that anyway because of the steal sequencing. Yeah, he can do exactly this, but the difference is the raid leader still being alive. But the alternate play was not possible. He was just kind of 1 damage away from the absolute dream turn there.
And look at this now. Seiko winning on board.
Yes.
And most importantly for me, just has Soul Mirror sat there now, live for the rest of the game, waiting. Because Soul Mirror, at least I feel from most zoo boards, is very effective at just being a hard wipe.
Yeah, it can be a little awkward in my experience. Weirdly, like, this raid leader could potentially have something to say about it, but the Dark Glares and Disease Vultures, which are 2 of the scariest cards, are asymmetrical in the sense that they don't die to Soul Mirror, so they can be a bit of a problem. But yeah, there's largely a lot of minions, 5/5s, 3/2s, so on, that do bite the dust.
And it's just the point in the game where I think there's a potential chance that Seiko's big fear are just the Giants now. And they obviously get cleaned up pretty easily, that Soul Mirror.
Yes, that's fair. And the one thing that you do have to potentially look at, though, is that Viper can still just out-resource the Priest from this position, which is kind of an underrated factor of the matchup as well. And the Seiko will potentially start running out of cards quite quickly. That Murazon pickup might just have something to say about that, though.
He also just has, like, a chunk of the time, 9 damage from hand. Potentially more with the way the Penflinger may or may not. I guess 10 guaranteed if he doesn't discard the second Soulfire.
Oh, Viper does, yeah, sorry. I thought you were talking about Psycho.
No.
I was like, wait,
Yeah.
how is Psycho doing 10 damage with this one Penflinger? What are you talking about?
But now, this looks a little bit trickier. This Flame Tongue Totem being a nightmare for a Viper right now.
Yeah.
And also the Giant just not being quite good enough. Does Viper now just kind of has to play his hand and just Soulfire down this Vile Fiend, or maybe get rid of the Totem instead? Penflinger, the 3-1 or the 1-1 doesn't really matter because he clears both of those up, and drop a Giant and kind of hope?
Does look like that, yeah. It's just a shame to be using the Soulfires here, when ideally just getting Giant down in play and then threatening lethal with the Soulfires would probably where Viper would more like to be at right now.
Raised Dead can definitely help out here, though.
Camera Thread will shuffle a second copy of the Prime into his deck, which does continue that resource train, but Viper is very rapidly running out of health to play with here. Yep. This is the turn we were discussing. It did change a little bit because of the life tap out pump. This looks pretty solid. Now suddenly 11 showing, 12 showing with the Soulfire in hand, 16. Why is Penflinger just such a funny card?
I must consider.
It's just... It really is just a card we've not really seen before, right? In just its effect being like a repeatable bounce. Normally, the bounce effects we've seen historically in Hearthstone are like, you bounce something once or twice maybe, but Penflinger, you can actually go off with certain hands where it just keeps dealing damage, keeps having that effect. It's crazy.
Right. Cabal Shadow Priest now on the Flesh Giant as well.
Oof.
Absolutely backbreaking for Viper here. He also just chooses not to kill off the Camera Thread here, instead choosing to go for the steal on the Flesh Giant, which of course makes perfect sense. A, because he gets the huge tempo swing right now, but also B, he kind of denies yet another power draw from Viper by not putting one more Prime into his deck immediately.
He can technically just stay up. He could go for the Soulfire on the Totem, potentially, just to be the cheapest or cleanest way to have the highest chance of staying alive. But it's pretty tough right now because it's less about him staying alive and more about how does he actually kill Seiko now that he's probably looking at using up 2 Soulfires of his deck.
It's just going to be
totem up.
It's going to be a freaking 10-8 on the other side of the board that he's going to have to contest with now. Oh, disgusting.
I mean, lethal? If he goes Murazon Soulfires the 1-3 on Penflinger's face.
Yup. Uh-huh. Tell me more.
I would have loved it if that Penflinger just aimed face and Psycho's like, oh yeah, I got this.
It just is lethal. It's guaranteed. It's guaranteed. Yeah. He just does this.
Okay, he can attack with the totem, of course.
Yeah.
Of course. We mere mortals by we I mean me, of course, are suggesting silly plays when actually, for some reason, just forget it. You could just buff the totem and gain a whole extra attack because really it was also number of attacks on board, which is why we saw Viper kill off the Cabal Shadow Priest, because that just reduced a whole attack option down, whereas then we could see, obviously, if you get multiple attacks, more likely to get through the Voidwalker, gives the damage for the Giant to go base. So pretty well done there from Seiko, taking the victory. And Viper was really just pushed into a corner, honestly, because I think the second he had to bail out of the potential double Soulfire plan, the game was just he was just going to lose over time, right? That's what it felt like after that.
It did, yeah, and good spot on the lethal in the end from Seiko. I certainly caught it late. It's a blind spot that I do get caught in sometimes, and I think it's a very easy blind spot to fall into. Is just the idea that zero attack minions can attack if you buff them.
Right.
I remember very vividly a game in a Masters tour, back in the combo priest days, where a minion had got hexed, and the only way lethal could be achieved, even though it was this big hand of buff spells and inner fire, was to buff up the frog specifically to then allow other attacks go through. And I missed it then as well, and as did the player in that situation. So it's clearly a blind spot in my brain somewhere that I'm not addressing. But Seiko did spot it after a little bit of a delay as well, and was able to get through.
Yeah, and that does mean he goes 1-0 up in his series, and the prophecy may be coming true here, Saul. Because if Seiko takes today to finishes in first place, he has beaten 2 horrible matchups for the Priest there, and had a truly deserved first place. But Viper is by no means done. All he has to do is win this one and one more, and he is going to actually take the victory for himself with this zoo list. I'm just going to have one quick check, but yep, to no surprise, both players sticking to the primary, no real benefit to be gained from switching off anything else.
Viper, yet again, as you basically always are in this matchup, is one Dark Lair away from a good time with this hand.
Okay, though, starting off with the Flame Imp, fantastic Tour Guide to follow up. Maybe not necessarily next turn from Viper. He could delay it just a little bit to keep the curve cleaner. But this Raised Dead helps out so much with Giant numbers, especially when you're using it on a, not guaranteed right now, but when a Flame Imp's in the pool, right? It not only reduces the Giant mana cost down because you raise Dead, but then also get to replay a Flame Imp. It's absolutely huge.
Yes. Slower start here from Seiko, although he does have the Breath of the Infinite locked up, ready to go again. Which is
now
huge.
yet again, there is Canrathed, Voidwalker, Tour Guide, Tap, not necessarily in that order, from Viper if he wants. He made a similar wide play on the board last game and got, I want to say, okay, he got punished for it with the Breath of the Infinite, but it was the right play there for Viper, but we'll see if history is going to repeat itself now.
Very much looks like it might.
There is so much
Considering the relative it's the exact same turn.
Wow!
Yeah, I was considering the relative merits of the tap this turn versus tap next turn argument there. Of course, you saw the upside there in that you can just hit another cheap demon to be able to play off your Canrathad. Of course, the counter argument to that is that you can pick up a Vulture or a Dark Lair on the coming turn as well to be able to get immediate impact out of that 0 mana life tap. But if that's the eventuality, you do already have Raised Dead in your hand anyway, so it seems reasonable. Viper can't quite believe it. 2 games. He's had the start that specifically is just insanely aggressive, but loses to Breath of the Infinite, and he just got hit with the Breath of the Infinite. There's just not really much you can do about that. You don't play around it when you have that hand. You just do what your hand says to do, and they're the Highlander deck. They only have one answer. Seiko's just had it on both occasions.
Yeah. Tough call this turn as well. There's a lot to think about here. He could have started with Raised Dead and then progressed from there to have a chance. Say you got Canrathed and something he couldn't replay, like a Tour Guide for free. Would have maybe changed the turn up, but chose to tap first and go with the Raised Dead afterwards, going for Flame Imp and the Tour Guide are the outcomes there. And I think I'd like playing those 2 out now and then using the Cult Neophyte as a bit of a booster / backup option to secure the board next turn, because you've just seen Breath of the Infinite. Like, what's the answer this turn, even if he doesn't play Neophyte?
It's fair. Looking at it the other way around, although I guess you'd get the 0 cost life tap from the Tour Guide anyway. So, they're not going to have like spell answers this turn, especially if you play Cult Neophyte. So you can kind of force them to play minions instead and then blast through their minions with Brittlebone Destroyer. But yeah, that is still kind of available to you the other way around because you have the 0 cost life tap.
I must consider.
Maybe even a big deal that turn, actually, looking at it, the way it's played out, because now Seiko can't go like Cabal, Coin, Broom, which would have actually been pretty good. That's just not an option now.
Would have been sane, actually, yeah.
Yeah, it would have just been played. Would have just cleared the board.
Yep. Yeah, I think locking out the coin still actually has quite a lot of value in the situation that Viper's in right now.
Not too quickly.
Seiko, a lot to consider here. Even early mind renders in this matchup are something that you can look at. He's going to choose not to, and he is going to kind of fall right into the trap that Viper wanted him to here. Oh, and just be forced to play out the minion, and now suddenly Viper actually has a Hearthstone hand for the first time this series.
And has a magnificent turn, because pretty much he can just play his whole hand this turn if he wants.
Yep.
And guess what? I think he wants.
Flame Imp costs him 1, gains him 2, gets him up to a nice smooth 4 for a Brittle Bone Destroyer and 5 to face. Breath of the Infinite down, and now this is my experience in the matchup coming to the forefront, Raven.
Yeah,
this kind of board, this early, how do you deal with it?
What if Seiko chooses this turn to Mind Render? None of his cards are playable next turn if he uses the coin.
I think that's unlikely because I think he wants the coin very much for himself right now, for that exact same reason with his hand.
Right. Only because, like, what could he do? Wave, Broom, Coin, Mind Render. Clear up some of this, reduce the damage down for a turn, and kind of make your opponent pass?
I think if you wave, you don't want to do any. You don't want to clear any of the stuff, right? Like you want to just Frost Nova, like bootleg Frost Nova the board. The only thing you'd be really interested in doing is 1 damage to the Dark Glare, which you can't currently do, just because then you get set up for a Soul Mirror situation.
Seiko definitely falling back on this Soul Mirror for this.
Yep.
This was the payoff, right, of not doing anything overly fancy. His coin Soul Mirror is just too good. So yeah, I'm on board. It's going to be very clean as well.
Or at least not
very clean, but only leaving the Dark Mirror.
Yeah, but it's his last real removal at this point as well, and the fact that you do leave that Dark Layer up, you kind of just expect the worst to happen, an enormous board of Flesh Giants to come back at you the next turn, but actually not the reality right now. Viper's hand is very mediocre as it stands.
Yeah, and that's the big deal. Although it's his big removal gone, he does have Siamat, which against Zoo, Rush, Wind Fury, does a decent job of removal. If you tell me Viper's always going to make a huge, wide, scary board, of course Seiko's going to be in trouble. But if this is just a medium threat level response, then Siamat could do a really good job at keeping him safe.
And that's exactly what it's going to be. Because right now, Viper just has the anti-synergy hand. Nightshade Matron discards Expired Merchant. Flame Imp will ramp him back to 4. So I imagine the whole hand is just getting spewed here, more or less. It's just at 6.
I did wonder whether he wanted to go for the potential chance of Merchant actually duping the Jailers instead for the chance at Hell.
Oh.
No, just going to play it out.
Oh, we're getting deep in the Raven bag now.
Oh, yeah. Well, we've not got much time, so best of 3 and we're in the finals.
I know.
I've got to get in while I can.
So, pretty sick Mind Render, yeah? 2 can play this game, Raven.
Well, that was just a silly suggestion, wasn't it, Sol? Come on.
And yours are...
slightly less silly.
Okay.
At least most of the time mine are actual plays. I guess.
Alright, real talk. Penance, Time Rip, go to 14, take 8 off the board. No minions in play, so you don't let the Expired Merchant pop. And you're facing down 7?
7. Seems reasonable at 14. After seeing the Soulfire on as well.
Quickly.
Oh, sorry, the Soulfire's
they're in the merchants. That's the point,
yeah.
right? Yeah, that's why I'm saying like you don't play minions potentially.
I mean, like he knows there's one less Soulfire readily available, right?
Yeah.
Oh, was that hand?
Good draw, Nightshade. High power at least.
He always taps this turn, right?
I imagine so, yeah.
You were just a burden.
The main deal here, whether to tap or not, is okay.
And
the
you
fact that if
always
Seiko-
play that.
If Seiko draws Zephyrus, then the game ends whether he taps or not, so he may as well
Yeah.
tap and try and make the game end quicker.
Veilweaver, Murazond gets him Soulfire Nightshade Matron, which most often clears up 2 minions, but then still leaves him dead. Sometimes it wins him the game. Crucially important, by the way, that Viper did play the Soulfire on the previous turn. We've seen it happen already. Mindrender burn from your opponent's hand for lethal.
Most importantly, though, believe in the Murazond.
Is there a better line? Can the Broom do enough work? Grand Mummies and Sethic. Divine Shield, Wind Fury, Siamat, and then give it Rush. That's not good enough.
It's just not enough, right?
Divine Shield taunt Siamat and then give it Rush? Nope, still not good enough. It's the problem, as soon as you start playing minions, Viper just gets 2 more Soulfires in his hand.
Right.
That's the issue.
Is it ever like... Yeah, because if he plays a main to kill this Voidwalker, a minion lives because Voidwalker kills nothing right now.
Right. And there's it's also been so close. Like, I've been in between talking, like, trying to wrap my head around, like, killing the Expired Merchant play Lucia turns to just try and, like, straight up kill Viper. But the problem is, because Viper's hand has stayed empty the whole time, all you get back is a hand with 2 Soulfires in it, which until that turn, Viper was not dead to 1 Soulfire. So you'd play one Soulfire and then the other one would get discarded. But, like, that was so tantalizingly close the whole time as well. Feels like maybe there was something in there somewhere that Seiko could have stitched together for a win condition at the end of the game. But I certainly couldn't quite see it, and didn't seem like Seiko was able to see it either. So if there was a line, please do feel free to at me and tell me what it was, because it was just felt like it was there, just on the edge of reality, like the way to just scam that game away from Seiko's side.
It was very close, wasn't it? But I think that game was a very good display of why Highlander Priest can suffer a little bit. Because yes, there was the Breath of the Infinite, which was great to reduce down that early aggressive board. If there wasn't that, then Seiko would have been in a lot more trouble. But that's kind of all there was. The rest of the game was Seiko trying to piece together like multiple turns worth of plays to keep the board empty and to keep the threats low. Whereas if there was a list more akin to Warmer's Priest, which is a 2 of everything, the Pyros, the double Apotheosis, double sets of Breath of the Infinite, then that more consistently keeps a board clear. It doesn't necessarily always win you the game, but you saw there, well, the downside of only having 1 card of each in your list, right? Because once you've used it, it's just gone.
Now it all comes down to this. One final game, Warlock versus Priest. You've got to say that Seiko has been running above average in the matchup up until this point and only finds himself at 1-1. He's had those breaths early on to clear that early aggression, as we've been talking about. Viper hasn't been hitting any of the absolute early nutso hands, apart from the ones that die immediately to Breath of the Infinite, which Seiko has been able to deal with. So you'd imagine he's still up against it here, but crucially, he is still in with a chance.
Yeah, honestly, even though there's the unfavored aspect of the matchup, the series just feels so close. Even then, as you were talking about, it felt like there could have been a way. There was a chance at Soulfires at certain points with certain plays of the game and so on. Like, it feels very, very close. And honestly, although if you would force me to seriously answer, yeah, Viper probably does win, Seiko's got a lot of answers and got a lot of just good play that helps him at least keep up with Viper in the early mid-game. Here, though, there is also Sethic Renew, which isn't too shabby an opening. It's less of the the defensive opening he might want with, say, Valfiend, for example.
Yeah.
Well, it is solid. The heal is going to come into impact. And also, just the Sephic Veilweaver is a solid shape and also a huge threat that Viper simply just cannot ignore.
Yeah, and Viper has a very different hand this time around himself. He has a much more mid-rangey hand.
He's just
with
playing around
the,
Breath of the Infinite again. It's fine.
with the Vulture Raise Dead combination, but he's going to need some minions to go down first here before he can get very quick value out of that Disease Vulture. Okay, Tour Guide, probably one of the strongest draws in his deck right now.
Yep, tap into... Ooh, yeah, I guess it's just Tour Guide pass, right? Coin into Vulture, tap next turn.
I think so, yeah. You could also just Soulfire the 2-3 and just live the dream, which I think you probably have to here. Just pray. Okay.
Oh.
Middling outcome. Obviously, discarding Vulture was worse. Discarding Hand of Gul'dan was best. Coin
Here's a
largely
question.
the option in the middle.
Would you rather discard the Raised Dead than the coin there?
Would you rather discard the Raised Dead than the coin? Yes, slightly, I guess.
Yeah, I think I'm with you, but that'll help. Oh wow, if Viper couldn't coin into Vulture that turn, then this is the next best thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Gets to fill up on the hand. And now there are just more options, as Penflinger now as an additional self-damage activator. The cards he has on board aren't the best for Raised Dead targets, but he has Raised Dead targets, which is important as well.
What? Just funny.
Viper's like, right, how do I steal that? I want one of those.
Sure does.
A little bit infuriating that there's a weird, like, triple trade then Matron, but then that doesn't achieve what you want it to.
Right. It looks just like a Vulture turn to me, but Viper gets his pick of the farm as to what exactly he wants to raise dead here. Whether he wants another Merchant, which I expect he will, since hands are going back into his hand once he makes the trade.
Yeah, I think Tour Guide Merchant feels very good here. Soul Jailer, it is one of those cards that I've sat and considered if it's worth it in the list. I definitely see the upsides, but it does feel like one of the lower impact cards in the deck.
He turns down the Merchant. Interesting. Oh. This is a dynamic I've talked about where you can just actually get too stuck with copies of Discard and Hand of Gul'dan in your hand. So actually you get into a point where you actually can't make plays because you're going to overdraw or fatigue yourself like ludicrously quickly, which you might not think would be a factor when Viper has 20 cards left in his deck, but I promise you it is. Like, it does happen. So yeah, Viper deliberately turning down that option here because he already has access to the Nightshade Matron for the additional discard if he would like it.
Yeah, instead of going, oh, this is a Hand of Gul'dan proc, it's like a Hand of Gul'dan proc to the power of Hand of Gul'dan, right? Every time you do it, it just increases so much more. It's not just like a 1, 2, 3 pattern at all.
Yeah.
Does still have Vulture as well, or another Vulture in hand. Can go just at least this turn to potentially set up another Tour Guide so he has a free Vulture tap or Brittlebone tap next turn, which looks pretty good. It's just how he fills out the rest of the turn.
I do like Vulture tap this turn, and then if he doesn't need to react, he can just drop the Cult Neophyte on the following turn.
Yeah, I think I like Penflinger instead of Tour Guide this turn.
Okay.
Because next turn, Tour Guide opens up more, I think, for you with the Brittlebone. Because he doesn't need the tap this turn, I guess is my point. Whereas next turn, the tap might be more valuable.
Sure. I would argue the one thing I really want to do next turn is play Cult Neophyte. Which means I'm never playing, like, Tour Guide into Brittlebone plus the Cult Neophyte. But that actually doesn't change whichever way around you make that turn. Because you also can't Penflinger into Brittlebone into Cult Neophyte on the following turn. So that's not really an argument between the two plays. It's just kind of like, I think, number one thing, next turn, Cult Neophyte, don't get Soul Mirrored. That's the card you lose to. Ooh. It's a big point.
Now suddenly as well, there's potential like Cult Neophyte, and then Matron to help bust through this Convincing Infiltrator.
So many possibilities.
Yeah, Matron discards and draws. It will overdraw here, I believe, to the tune of 1 card.
Burden.
Nope, he's fine. Miscounted.
One of the weird things as well is, although the trade looks clean with the Matron and the Penflinger, is like, does he actually want to trade the Penflinger here? Does he? Would he rather make a value trade elsewhere and there are more targets on the board?
Yeah, the value trade is a weird one as well. I think because he's playing Cult Neophyte, the value trade is more fine because he knows that the Soul Mirror cannot come down.
Right.
So yeah, I like making those value trades happen.
And yeah, and then trading off the 1/4 again might seem a little bit overkill, but when Apotheosis is a card, yeah, you don't really want a 1/4 just sat on the board for no reason.
The Zephyrus is brutal as well. The Zephyrus is going to think he has 5 mana and he just doesn't. Oh, the Zephyrus will offer Brawl and Chaos Nova and garbage like that, and it will just be unplayable this turn. Disgusting.
It's still a pretty good response, though, considering the mana restriction here from Seiko.
Yeah.
You here for the tour?
Forbidden rituals, you say?
3/4 is huge. Not only is it decent stats for a 3-drop, it's just having all those stats loaded towards the health is what he needs right now. He doesn't necessarily know that, but he will fear Soul Mirror above all else right now. So having healthy minions is enormous. I think he's doing his best to kind of wheedle that last big piece of removal out of his opponent's hand before he starts dropping down Flesh Giants. Or does he know there's actually multiple options for board sweeps in Seiko's hand still?
And that's the thing, is just Chaos Nova just good enough here? And then just save a Soul Mirror? Because Soul Mirror does leave your opponent with something, whereas Chaos Nova just doesn't.
Yeah. Soul
And then
Mirror
just
does
still
also
have a
leave...
Soul Mirror.
Soul Mirror does also leave you with something, though, which is also a debatable point in its favor. Man, it's tough. Without the Wave of Apathy used last turn, like, you had a potential turn with just, like, Galakron Wave as well and just tank for a turn.
Right,
And
yeah,
then you have, like, all the AoE set up in your hand, like, very cleanly, safely from dying. But the Wave of Apathy had to be used on the previous turn. There was no real other option.
Your wish is my suggestion.
Shadow Flame?
Looks like it.
Leaves up a 3/1 for the opportunity to develop his Vile Fiend over just playing Chaos Nova. Alright, seems reasonable.
Little agony goes a long way.
Viper's about to go off here. And this might sting going forward from Viper. He's got 2 giants. Oh! Okay, real talk.
Hardcast? Yeah.
Does he always play them both?
I mean, I don't...
I've just seen Zephyrus go all in.
Yeah, I don't know where his reads are at.
I know, me neither.
That's the problem.
I don't even know where my read's at right now. Never mind Viper.
Because, you know, on the surface, you're looking at a 3-card priest that has already used multiple AoEs this game. It's a perfectly valid argument to just say, play everything, end the game right now before he draws the Soul Mirror. Don't give him the window to, like, Galakron and be alive and then be able to play a Kronx on the following turn. Like, all of these things are compelling arguments. And the fact that he's playing 2 3/4s as well, that's security against the Soul Mirror.
Goes a long way.
He's not playing both. I can tell you that much. He is not playing both.
He's not playing any.
He's playing neither. The God reads coming through from Viper right now.
That's funny. I guess this is this just genius? You've seen
might be.
Zephyrus. You've
Yeah.
seen Zephyrus. What's
Yeah.
the biggest problem? Soul Mirror. That's the best AOE. Just don't let it work.
Just threaten lethal without it. Yeah.
Yeah, just don't
This
let
is-
it work.
This is inspired. This is actually inspired.
That's 17 damage, so even with heal.
Yep.
Oh, he does lose the 3-1 if it's Soul Mirror. He does lose some damage, so it's not lethal. If the Soul Mirror comes down. But if the Soul Mirror comes down, then Soul Mirror's gone. You just jam 2 Flesh Giants.
Yep.
That is actually insane. That is what. Oh, that's such a good play. And I'll be honest, I wouldn't have made that play in 1,000,000 years.
20 damage. 16 on board. 4 from the Soulfire currently. Seiko at 22.
Now he's got the fear of Kronks. But now, if he plays one giant, then he can't get Soul Mirrored and Kronks at the same time.
Correct.
So many
Oh, but the problem is the Vile Fiend procs
possibilities.
next turn.
Also correct.
So then does he have to play like...
What if you
No,
just
he can't
hand?
play-
What if you just hand for second Soulfire?
I mean,
Just end the freaking
that's
game.
not bad.
Oh wait, he's Soulfired. He's one Soulfire down. He used it in the early game against the Sethic Veilweaver, right? That was this game?
Oh, he discarded the Vulture, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did he discard the Vulture?
Oh,
I'm so-
Penflinger! Penflinger! Oh, the Penflinger, Raven! The Penflinger!
Oh. Wow. Insane. Viper's a god. That game was amazing. And Penflinger takes the victory for Viper there. What a game. And honestly, Sol, although it might look simple to just play around Soul Mirror, not play any big giants, I definitely wouldn't have done it. I'm very impressed with that game from Viper. We have a very deserving winner there. Commiserations to Seiko, but wow, that game and that series was awesome, actually. I think that was really cool to see not only what the Zulist can do, but how the Priest can or cannot deal with certain options. That was sick.
Yeah, I think it's a really good example of why Priest struggles that so much in that matchup, because I think it's fair to say Seiko ran above average in that series, and still Viper was able to come out on top. But yeah, I mean, really just stop and applaud for Viper, because I've been talking about, he's been tweeting about Zoo a lot recently. One of the other things he did tweet when he said people are potentially sleeping on this deck, is he also said like the deck has a lot of decisions, and I think your decisions really feel like they matter. And certainly there was no better demonstration of that than Viper's play there in that second series. He looked a little bit unhappy with his semi-final series and some of the small decisions that he made. But that second series, he looked a lot more comfortable, a lot more considered. Looked like he was getting more stuff right as well, and certainly operating at a level above and beyond the two of us with his plays towards the end there.
100%. It was just awesome to watch. But let's take a look at that final bracket, because we are going to be done. So let's see how it's shaken out in the end. Although, as we said at the start of the show, the positioning of which players are making it to Division A and Division B was already decided. This was just for the extra spice, wasn't it? Viper taking the victory over Tice against Mali Druid, and then taking it down, of course, over Seiko on that Priest. So really been putting Zoo through its paces. And of course, we had the combo of Casey and Tice both making Malygos Druid work for this tournament.
Yeah, big news. All 4 of these players will be rocking it in Division A this season. They have all got their work done very much so. But we had to round out the week, round out our Swiss qualification weeks with another weekly champion. And I'm sure Viper will be ecstatic that honestly all the words that he's thrown out there in support of Zoo going through have been backed up to this point, and he's been able to take down the fat dub.
Yeah, absolutely huge there from Viper, and I just look forward to seeing what all the players can do, going into the next stage of the tournament. But that is going to be over for the Swiss stage for us. And speaking of weekly champions, Sol, we have something pretty special planned for the last week. Since we both made a pretty solid prediction, we were ready for this, and I'd like to congratulate you on winning predictions, at least throughout the Swiss and definitely throughout this week with that Viper. So I'd like to present you with the newest prediction trophy. This is a European Grandmasters special. So I'd like to present you with this, and hope you enjoy it and hope you like it.
Wow, that's amazing. That's so kind. Oh, thank you. That's great. Thank you. I was not expecting this at all. I will add this to the trophy shelf alongside all of my others from previous predictions, previous tournaments, yo-yo trophies as well. Might need to get this thing reinforced pretty soon. It's getting very, very heavy. indeed. But yeah, thank you so much. That's very sweet. Didn't have to do this. That's very very humble and very noble of you, Raven. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I do respect some good prediction making, and I did not make a good prediction because I currently have a trophy case with nothing to put in it yet. So maybe next time for me, but that's going to be it from us. Thanks a lot for watching. We do appreciate it, and we are going to be done for the day. America's is going to be coming up. I'm not 100% sure if it's coming up right now because it is still quite early, but we'll give you an update on that as quickly as possible. But thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you next time in the Hearthstone Grandmasters European region. See you later.